Welcome everyone to another Grand Archive Top 5 video. This is our last Top 5 video before we leave for Gen Con, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this series of videos so far. If you haven't caught them all, I think they're all going to be watches that you'll enjoy watching if you do enjoy this one, so make sure you head back and watch the other Top 5 videos to see our thoughts on a variety of different sorts of classifications of cards in Fractured Crown. But of course, Fractured Crown is the Grand Archive first expansion, the second set, releasing August 25th, 2023, and we're super pumped about that. And we're about to go to Gen Con and go and experience the pre-release for Fractured Crown and get to experience those cards. I can't wait to do that. And when we return, we will have a lot more firsthand accounts to give you guys of these cards. We're going to be doing a full deep dive into the set. All that stuff is coming, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But until then, we wanted to get out some of this content so you guys could be excited about the set just like we are. And in this video, we are talking about the top 5 meta shifting cards. So this is the video where I get to be the most wrong. I can't wait for this. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your comments about where you think I'm right or wrong about things. Everything here is very much purely speculation, and one little change in the timeline of how people are playing decks can change whether or not I'm right or wrong about any of these particular cards. I think actually Fractured Crown has lots of things that are going to disrupt the metagame and promote some new decks, power up some, depower others. So really, I'm not going to feel bad if you go out and say, you know what, I don't think you're right about this, but you missed this important card. That's totally cool. I probably did, because I probably could have done a top like 40 cards that I think are going to affect the metagame. But I had to at some point pick 5 of them. So let's jump right into those, and we will talk about our top 5 meta shifting cards in Fractured Crown. All right, for my number 5 pick, like I said, there are so many different cards I could have put on this list, but ultimately I think I've decided on Blanche, Sheltering Saint. Blanche is a 2-cost, 1 attack, 2 life, unique ally, cleric human with level 2+ fast activation. This is a rather new keyword on an ally that allows you to play this ally at fast speed. And she has a static ability that says if another unit you control would be dealt non-attack damage, prevent an amount of damage equal to the amount of cards in your memory. Now, this is a fantastic ability. Again, note that it's a constant ability. This is not just for the turn. It's as long as Blanche is in play, she's going to prevent some amount of non-attack damage to all of your other units. And remember that your unit includes your champion. If you know anything about the Grand Archive metagame in Set 1, there are kind of 2 main pillars of the metagame. The Wind and Fire Lorraine decks and the Wind and Fire Rye decks they're really the killers, the ones that have been doing the best. There are some Water Xanders and some other Xanders that have kind of snuck in to the side. Occasionally, Water variants of Lorraine have shown up. But overall, those are kind of the main ones you're going to see. And of course, the Lorraine decks are attacking you all over the place. And the Rye decks are all using non-attack damage to win the game. If anything's going to shake up the metagame right now, I think it's going to be a sideboard card that can be put into any deck, including the Fire ones, which currently have almost no way to sort of interact with the opponent's endgame stuff other than Rye being able to play Spell Shield Arcane in the Arcane package. And being able to put this in any deck and being able to activate it from level 2+, meaning if you're playing like a Fire Merlin deck, you're using a deck that can't go to level 3, can't play Spell Shield Arcanes. Blanche can come in and actually provide you some protection. And wow, she has an effective ability to prevent damage. Now it's equal to the amount of cards in your memory. So it will presumably, the turn you play, it'll presumably be at least 2, but it's not too hard to make that 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on what you have in hand. But I can see Fire decks that are siding in Blanche will have access to Creative Shock or something on their turn. So you go, surprise, I'm going to Creative Shock, I'm going to draw on some cards. Maybe you're trying to draw into Blanche and you find her, and then you pay 2 more, put Blanche down. Now suddenly you're preventing 5 damage from all your opponent's attacks. That's going to, not attacks, y'all hear your opponent's spells. That's going to take those Arcane Blasts on your champion from 11 damage down to 6 each or something. It's going to make it very hard for your opponent actually to get the kill. And the problem always is that usually when your opponent starts going for the kill like that, then they're already investing resources that are going to make it so much harder for them to try again later. That is one advantage I like about the Mana Weaver build of Rye, and I think Mana Weaver is still going to be able to do some. Mana Weaver is always able to play around this stuff a little bit better than Stormseer, but certainly against either version, Blanche is going to be a welcome addition. And I think if anything's going to count as a meta shifting card, it is this kind of flexible, normal element tool that's going to be able to come in and say, hey, you know, Rye, you need to cool it a little bit. If Rye's playing Advent of the Stormcaller, popular in a lot of the Stormseer builds, Blanche completely blanks Advent of the Stormcaller in the same way that Safeguard Amulet does. Normally, it was just against Wind decks you feared playing against Veiling Breeze. Now, against any deck, you're going to fear that Blanche coming in. And again, she sits in play and she provides this ability constantly, meaning that decks are going to have to find a way to get rid of her in order to be able to unlock being able to attack. And you can't just, normally you can bait out the Safeguard Amulet and then end the turn and then it's gone. Now you actually have to commit something to dealing with the Blanche, whether that's one of your fireballs, a Sparklight, having Focused Flames in the deck. Another really cool thing is not just against those kill condition cards, but against board wipes or any other damage to your other allies. Blanche is going to prevent that. It's not just your champion, it's any unit other than her. So that means that if your opponent goes for a Purge in Flames or an Anger of the Skies, and you can fast activate Blanche, put her in, suddenly you're going to save your whole board, and then she's going to be the only one that goes away. For what it's worth, she's also a human, which means she'll work nicely in win strategies with Phalanx Captain. So Win's going to have access to lots of ways to prevent damage. Veiling Breeze and Blanche can work hand in hand in order to provide lots of tools that the Rye deck is going to have to figure out how to play around. And that sounds to me like it's definitely going to have an impact on how which decks are the most powerful, which decks people are choosing to play, and how people try and tweak their deck to play around the tools that are against them now. That's really, I always say that's the big thing about Grand Archive. You get to that end game and it's really all about figuring out how to play around your opponent's interaction with you and interact with your opponent. And Blanche is just a clear interaction piece that a lot of decks are going to be able to play. And I'm very excited to have her in the metagame. So that is my number 5, Blanche, Sheltering Saint. Number 4 card, and my pick for my favorite artwork in the set by far actually, is Peaceful Reunion, a non-CSR card. I guess the CSRs are so beautiful, but Peaceful Reunion is a 4-cost action cleric spell with slow that has activate this card only if you have not declared an attack this turn, and until the beginning of your next turn, you and target player can't declare attacks. Banish Peaceful Reunion. Now, this is a card where when I first saw it, my jaw dropped for a second. I was like, "There's no way." But then I thought about it a little more. Like, okay, no. I don't think this card's absurd, but I think there are going to be particular decks that really, 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 really like having this card in them because they are able to accrue the value towards winning the game without having to play more stuff. That's what it's going to come down to. Peaceful Reunion is a 4-cost action that doesn't progress your win condition at all. I've been playing a lot of Mana Weaver Rye. Mana Weaver Rye is a very active Rye deck. It's trying to take positions early into the mid game where it's gaining static value the whole time. It's trying to make hasty messenger plays. It's trying to play those creative shocks. It's trying to pitch floating memory as much as possible. And Peaceful Reunion is not currently a card that I think I would mainboard or necessarily even sideboard in that deck, because having a 4-cost spell that puts you down a card and doesn't progress your win con is not very helpful. However, Stormseer Rye is a deck that I think operates a little differently. And I think Stormseer Rye decks, which can banish their own cards to accrue the level that they need in order to end up playing things like Careful Study for free and everything, those decks are usually just trying to stall the game until they get to level 3. And against attack-focused decks, if you're not playing this in the main, you can slap this in your sideboard at least. The opponent's playing an aggressive... By the way, the decks that beat Rye the best right now are the ones that are just committing things like Phalanx Captains and Banner Knights to the board and smashing. Peaceful Reunion prevents those decks entirely from attacking, giving you 1 or 2 turns in order to build up to this combo so you can win the game. I also think this is a potential contender for assassin control decks. I find that I'm also looking to accrue cards and having a harder time accruing them there. But for example, the turn Xander gets to level 3 Blinding Steel and needs to wait a turn to turn on his recovery engine. If he can just play a Peaceful Reunion that turn and prevent himself from dying for sure until the next turn, that might be all you need. Go down one card and you guarantee you're not going to die, and you can turn on your engine and suddenly you're going to draw a bunch of cards and you're going to heal a bunch, you start dealing damage. I think that can be worth it too. So I see this in those kind of combo control decks that are trying to stall out the game, but not necessarily all of them, not the ones that are going to be looking for the more proactive gameplay. But there's no doubt that this could be a meta shifting card, because against attack focused decks, this is it's almost a time walk. It's almost taking an extra turn, preventing them from doing anything that progresses their win con, when their win con is typically just trying to kill you before you can go off. So I think it's a very, very solid card. Mostly I love the art, but I think it's definitely a card you're going to see playing in sideboards, and you're going to consider it for your main board depending on what the metagame looks like, and depending on if your deck actually cares to play things that go down a card and do nothing, more or less, to actually, proactively help you. That's my number 4 pick with a 4 cost, Peaceful Reunion. All right, so my number 3 card for the cards that are going to completely shift the metagame in Fractured Crown. Well, I'm not sure about completely, but I think I might be a little higher on this card than some others, but we're just going to go with it. I'll explain to you kind of where I'm coming from, and I think it'll depend a lot on how the meta shakes out, but this is Morgan Soul Guide. Morgan is a 2-cost unique ally cleric / mage human with 1 attack and 3 life. She has tons of abilities, actually. She's full of them. She has level 1+, prevent all non-attack damage that would be dealt to Morgan. Let's just stop right there and look at that. Morgan is another, a lot like our first piece, a lot like Blanche. She is another, I think, very clearly anti-mage card that is coming out there. She's going to take control of the board. She's going to say, you know what? I am the true archmage here. I'm going to be the one controlling what's going on. She's going to be hard for fire decks to do anything about, specifically, of course, fire ride decks. Now, if you're Lorraine, you got attacks, you're just gonna attack her. It's not a big deal. Just get her out of here. Even if you even care, you might not even care. But against those ride decks, she's going to be a force. I think if anything shifts from this, if Rye is still a deck seeing play and Morgan starts seeing play main board to deal with Rise, then Rise might have to shift to some other element like wind to be able to bounce Morgan around, because the only thing you can really do as a Rye mage against Morgan is have Sparklight, and as a lot of Rye players know, Sparklight is sort of a key component to play around prevention effects in the late game in general, to be able to pierce a spell shield arcane and make the opponent get nothing out of it, no light encounters. So Morgan's going to ask you, she's going to divert the Sparklights to her, and otherwise she's going to say, if you didn't draw your Sparklight, if you're not running it, if you only have Focused Flames, you only have Fireball, you good luck. You're not going to be able to get rid of her very easily without committing several attacks to her instead. From your sparse allies in the deck. And what does she do while she's in play other than not die? Well, that's where I think she gets quite powerful. She has level 2+, your opponents can't recover. Now, I want to stress this one, because I think one of the reasons that some people might be overlooking her a little bit is that recovery is sort of niche right now. It's really only in a few particular, water decks aren't super played. And then the assassin decks are the ones that are doing just kind of like Mondo recovery. And obviously, that sounds good, other than the fact that Xander could probably just attack her pretty easily and take her out. But in the Fractured Crown metagame now, things are going to get a little juicier. We have some powerful recovery options happening. I think the biggest thing I want to point out, there's 2 big things I want to point out. The new Spirit of Serenes that you're going to be starting the game with, if you're trying to set up a little more combos and stuff like that, you're going to go down a card and use the Spirit of Serene. Now, Spirit of Serene gives you that option, that panic button to remove the spirit and then recover in the late game. Morgan says, nope. You cannot do that, actually. So that's already going to, if she's in play, she's going to limit your spirit's ability and kind of punish you harder for not taking that extra card at the beginning. And the other thing that I think you are going to see quite a bit of is the Innervate cycle we've talked about in a previous video. Now, the Innervate cycle is so interesting because the Innervate cycle has the Recover 5, not as an effect, but as a cost of casting it. And what that specifically means is if you can't pay that cost, normally it means you have to have 5 damage counters on your unit, or you can't even play Innervate Agility, for example. Morgan says, okay, well, while I'm in play, you just can't play Innervate Agility. She's going to shut down some pretty key cards. So I think in general, just the existence of her right away is going to start to shift mage decks around a little bit and how they play and which ones are more powerful. But then as she exists in the metagame, she's going to, I think, continue to be able to shift a little bit what is more powerful. Not to mention the fact that just water is getting more playable in general. And water is going to have more restore or more recover effects that are coming into play and becoming more useful. And that means Morgan is simply going to gain value against those as well. It means that if you want to play water, you might actually be thinking about like water Mordred instead, where you have easy attacks, or water Xander, where you have those attacks that you can perform. Now, we haven't even talked about the third effect, but Morgan Soul Guide's third effect is a class bonus for Cleric and Mage. And I think this is where you're really going to find some utility in her. She says at the beginning of your recollection phase, you may glimpse one. If you don't, recover one. I really like Morgan as a little bit of zing in these water rye builds that we're starting to toy with the access to some of water's other tools, because Morgan gives you that once per turn ability to dig a little bit deeper and try and find the combos in a mage deck. Mage's big thing is, can I find the combo to take you out in time? If not, I lose. If I can win. And water decks, unlike fire versions and like Storm Seer versions, if you're trying to mess around with Mana Weaver, I know I'm a Mana Weaver simp. I'm sorry, but if you keep trying to make Mana Weaver work, then you're looking for more ways to dig into the deck because you don't have easy access to careful study. And Morgan, I think, can provide that turn after turn advantage of being able to glimpse and dig to the thing you need. And otherwise, getting that recovery every turn can help you shore up against matches where they're trying to deal that damage to you. One thing that Rai is always trying to do is get to a certain threshold. If we're playing against a 25 health level 3 champion, I need to get 3 damage on you so I can get to that clean, like double arcane blast kill threshold. And Morgan can make it so it's kind of hard to get there. And by making it hard to stick damage on to your opponent, it means that you have to commit even more resources on a kill turn before they find a way to kill you back. So yeah, I really like Morgan. I think she's really interesting. I think mage decks are going to be playing her, and I think she's going to be something that can come in and actually disrupt some powerful cards that are being played and be just a menace at other mage. She's like kind of like an anti-mage card. And I think if anything, that provides more tools for Rai decks to use and to fight Rai decks, which means, come on, that's got to have a meta impact. So that is my number 3 pick, Morgan Soul Guide. All right, my number 2 pick is one of the cards I'm most excited for in Fractured Crown as well. And I'm saying this while trying to temper my expectations for the card also. This card is Frostbind. It is a 2-cost action, cleric spell reaction with fast speed, and that's important because it wouldn't work if it didn't have fast speed. And it has negate target card activation unless its controller pays 2 reserve. Banish the card that had its activation negated this way. So this, for all the friends out there who know other card games, this is the game's first true counterspell. This will allow you to prevent your opponent from activating a card, any card from their hand, if they cannot or choose not to pay the 2. Now, that's really the big thing. And I think when you get to late game play in Grand Archive late game is very focused on playing around your opponent's outs, stopping them from winning the game or stopping them from stopping you from winning the game. And in those late game plays, Frostbind is going to be something that you can play around and you'll have to play around if they're playing a water deck. That's where I think Frostbind's big meta shift is going to be giving water a tool that is going to allow them to compete with elements like wind as far as their ability to interact with the opponent. But where I think Frostbind is going to have stronger counterplays, ones that actually occur where the opponent's not playing around them, is actually in that maybe early to mid game. There are a lot of decks right now that are trying to either early game dump their hand to play out multiple allies to the board, where an early game Frostbind will have a big impact actually in how much damage they end up dealing you. And there are mid-game plays that sometimes, like certain decks, like I think some Allen builds and some Rai builds will be going for a mid-game, like around level 2, peer into mana in order to establish a lot of Enlighten counters. And Frostbinding that can stop them from winning for multiple turns. It can actually have a pretty big impact because that peer into mana was going to turn into the counters that they needed in order to level up off of a power overwhelming and then copy a spell and kill you. And instead now they have to wait several turns to build more enlightened counters up via Rise level 2 effect. And it can just kind of cascade to be quite a bit of value. So Frostbind, I think, represents some potent ability in the early game, in the mid game, and in the late game. It has to at least be accounted for. The opponent has to try and play around it, or they'll walk into it when they go for a game with their final card in hand, and you just stop them. You say, nope, that doesn't happen. I know not everybody is a huge fan of counter magic and counterplay, and one thing you're going to have to do against a water deck now is every action you do, you're going to have to say, does it resolve? You know, when I activate this, does it resolve? And they're going to have to resolve it. But I think the big thing to think about too with this is that it means that you, to play around it, have to keep 2 more mana up the whole time, two more cards up the whole time. Your opponent also has to keep 3 cards in hand the whole time to keep it up. Really, it's sort of an equal trade of you're both having to keep more cards in hand. And it's a thing that I think is ultimately just going to serve to slow the game down a little bit. So the greatest meta shift from this is not only, I think, making water a little more viable, but just being another thing that's going to slow the game down going into set 2, because the more you try and dump your hand, the more Frostbinds are just going to walk all over you in the early game, and or just stop you from getting that sort of turn 4, turn 5 kill in the late game. So that is my number 2 pick, Frostbind. Okay, now for my number 1 most meta shifting cards that I think we're going to see in Fractured Crown. I initially, when I was preparing this video, my initial thought was to talk about Tamer's new cards, because I think it would be a massive meta shift if Tamer ended up seeing more play. The thing is, I'm just not, I haven't tested enough. I'm not positive that Tamer is going to make it into top cuts. So I have a hard time committing to that in calling Tamer the biggest meta shift, because I'm just not sure. But I'm more sure about a certain other class seeing more play in set 2. So for my number 1 pick, not out of the relative power level of them, but because I think this will allow this class to see more play in set 2, it is the Corazi cycle of Assassin support cards that are going to allow Assassin to become a more viable champion in all 3 elements. So those cards are Corazi Outlook, Corazi Arsonist, and Corazi Trapper. So we'll talk about each of them here, because these represent, I think Assassin has a number of tools actually, and I'm just really picking these as a representation, but I think these cards are ones that you're going to want to play in a lot of your Assassin decks anyway. We'll start with Corazi Trapper. Actually, Corazi Trapper is a 3-cost assassin human with 1 attack and 3 health, has on enter, put a preparation counter on your champion, and it has rest this, remove a preparation counter from your champion, target unit's attacks get -3 attack until end of turn. All of these cards have effects that allow you to remove preparation counters for extra benefits, and 2 of them actually give you a preparation counter on play. And I think that's one of the big issues Assassin has had, is both managing getting preparation counters and getting value out of preparation counters. And these are all really solid early mid-game plays that allow you to generate those preparation counters and then give you things to spend on them that can be quite useful. Corazi Trapper is the one I'm the least sure of, but it does give you the preparation counter. So depending on your build, I think that could be very powerful too. And giving a unit's attacks -3 until end of turn is actually a pretty nice when the opponent is like Lorraine and is trying to attack multiple times using Blessing or something, because you -3 all the attacks that turn. The 3 health makes it fairly difficult to get rid of, just like the Wind one also has 3 health. I think it's going to be just a solid card to play. I think the Assassin build had a little bit of room to develop its units a little better, its allies a little better. And I think this is going to be a decent option, because it does allow you to negate attacks without costing cards from hand. I think that's the big thing, is just preventing yourself from taking damage, so you know you don't lose the game too soon, while not costing you additional cards from hand. The opponent probably has to commit cards to deal with it or something. I think that's relatively nice. And I did find that Water Assassin had few ways to use the preparation counters, which means that this will be something you'll be able to use multiple turns in a row and could potentially generate more advantage. That said, I think Trapper is my least favorite of the 3. I'm going to move on to Corazi Arsonist. Corazi Arsonist is a 3-cost, 2 attack, 2 life ally with remove a preparation counter from your champion. Corazi Arsonist gains stealth until end of turn. And if a unit hit by Corazi Arsonist this turn would die, banish it instead. Now, I really like this remove a preparation counter ability because the really funny thing about it is that it's in a way, it's kind of active all the time without you having to pay the cost. The opponent is not going to want to attack it and have their attack blanked. So often it's going to act like it has stealth until your opponent says, okay, fine, I'm going to make you spend the preparation counter. They attack the arsonist, you spend the preparation counter, you give it stealth. And then they go, okay, now you don't have a preparation counter anymore. And that's why this thing couldn't have you get a preparation counter when it comes into play. Otherwise, it would just be too strong. So you do want to play this after you play something like Mark the Target in order to gain that preparation counter. But it's a very solid unit. Otherwise, the 2/2 isn't like the greatest in the world, but the fact that it banishes things when they die is also quite relevant. There are a number of units like Library Witch and Magus Disciple that your Rye player is counting on for drawing cards when they die. This will banish them instead, and then they will not get the on death trigger because this was a replacement effect that will replace that trigger and replace the death entirely with a banish. So Corazi Arsonist, I think, is a very cool card. Definitely in your aggressive assassin build, this is one that you'll easily slot in just as something that is going to be very annoying to deal with. The opponent's not going to want to attack into it, and it's going to get incremental damage on your opponent and potentially deny them some benefits, some cards as well. So I like Corazi Arsonist quite a bit. I think it's very good, and it's going to be a good fit in those aggressive assassin decks. But my favorite of the three is Corazi Outlook. Corazi Outlook is a 2-cost. I don't know why it's the cheapest too. It's so good. It's a 2-cost, 1 attack, 3 life. On enter, put a preparation counter on your champion. Nice. Great to play. Just it flows through your deck, gets you the things you need. And it has class bonus, remove a preparation counter from your champion. Opponents can't activate cards this turn. Glimpse 1. Activate this ability only during your turn. Wow. Okay. So this is a very, very potent effect because like I said earlier in this video, the end game in Grand Archive is very much focused on playing around your opponent's interaction, trying to figure out how to win through it or around it, and trying to figure out how to interact with your opponent to cause them to not win so that you can. And Corazi Outlook changes that game entirely, and I think is single-handedly going to bring Wind Assassin to become a playable deck in the metagame. Because once you have Corazi Outlook in play, at the start of your turn, but you can do this during your recollection or something before you draw a card, totally fine. You are going to just remove the turn you think you're going to go for game. You're going to remove preparation counter from your champion and say, you know what? You can't activate anything this turn. If you want to stop me right now, you have to play Veiling Breeze, or you have to play Water Barrier, or you have to play Spell Shield Arcane, or whatever. And if you don't, then you cannot interact with me as I try and kill you this turn. Your opponent will then just have to dump their interaction stuff right away. And all it cost you was a single preparation counter to do that. And then you got to Glimpse 1, which then made you potentially get a better draw that turn. Wow. This ability is crazy. I think this ability is super, super, super strong. And it's also going to affect those like water decks trying to play Frostbind because they can't Frostbind in response to this. They can't do anything. They just go, well, okay, I guess I can't Frostbind you this turn then. Good job. And I think the biggest gain we're going to get from these Corazi cycle of cards is Wind Assassin potentially becoming a playable deck. Now, it already had some interesting cheeky things it could do with some of the like critical allies and stuff. It's going to have to find the way to win the game consistently once it gets to level 3. But I think it can establish that pretty well already with Xander's level 3, and Corazi Outlook is going to make sure that when it's time to go like double Lightweaver's Assault and take your opponent out, your opponent just can't interact with you. If they choose to interact with you, you just go, okay, pass the turn, go ahead. And then you just interact with them instead on their turn. And you just keep popping Outlook until they don't respond. And then you know you're safe. And then you can go for the win. So powerful. So powerful. I love this card. And I think we're looking at Assassin being a big role player in the set 2 metagame. I think we're looking at Tamer potentially coming into. It's just hard for me to assume that's going to happen. And Rye and Lorraine are still going to be totally playable, totally powerful decks. There's a number of things in here that will shift how those decks build and what kind of win cons they go for, I think. but we're really going to have to see what decks people latch onto the most in the metagame and are getting the most consistent performance with to know which of these cards are really going to have the greatest impact on things. So with that said, those are my picks for what I think might be the top 5 meta shifting cards, but I would love to hear from you guys all in the comments. What do you think? Where was I wrong and where was I right? What cards are going to shift the metagame in Fractured Crown the most? Like I said, I think there's a lot of them. So go ahead and let me know what I missed. If I missed them, it's okay. And if I'm totally wrong about something, I'm okay with that too. Let me know though. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments about that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed this top 5 series. That's our last top 5 video for now. And we'll be returning in August with more Grand Archive content covering a lot more deep dive into the set once we've gotten some playtesting experience under our belts. We've played with the actual cards. I cannot wait to do that, and I can't wait to return with more of that content for you guys, including an entire set review like we did for set 1. I'm going to go through every single card in the set and give you just my straight thoughts on everything. A lot of it will be a bit more informed too, since we'll have that play experience behind us this time. So that's going to do it for this video and this series though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of this. Do you want me to do this for more games and more sets? We can certainly do more of this as well. It's been a lot of fun making these videos, and I hope you guys have enjoyed watching them. Thank you as always for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching another Main Deck video. You can support Main Deck by shopping at tcgplayer.com using our affiliate link. Check the description of the video for details. Main Deck is sponsored by J-Dubs Sports Cards and Gaming. Visit jwwcards.com and by our amazing patrons. Get exclusive content and other cool perks on the Main Deck Patreon. And hey, while you're here, I bet you'd like one of these videos. Go ahead, click one. I know you're gonna love it.